What's up, guys? So today on the podcast, Eugene and I are going to talk about an idea. We're going to give you an idea to chew on today about rolling to win. And we're going to talk, or it's based off of some stuff that I struggled with back in the day, but also recently I had a couple of messages come into me on Instagram that I'll talk about in a minute that kind of sort of spurred the inspiration for today's episode. But I hope this episode is helpful for you if you're someone that struggles with performing at the level that you think you're capable of. Then I think this podcast could be super useful to you. So we'll jump into today, and hopefully, as always, it gives you some idea to chew on, some idea to implement into your life or your training, so that you're able to make some sort of positive impact. With that said, if you guys would like to support us, you can check out our sponsors, Charlotte's Web at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu. Save 15% on the order. If you're one of those people that's always looking for a little something, right? A little something to get the extra edge for your training and for your life and everything else. I'm a big fan of CBD. It's one of those things where I noticed a definite improvement in relation to my sleep and into my overall inflammation that seems to be brought on by the sport that I train, right? And the martial arts and everything that I do. CBD seems to be a great addition for that. Now, like any supplement, it's not a replacement for anything, so if your diet's out of whack, all that stuff, it's one of those things where you want to get those things in first. But if you've got a good diet, you're drinking a lot of water, you're exercising and doing all the right stuff, and you're just looking for a little extra, I would definitely encourage you to try CBD if you have not already done so. And even if you've tried different CBD brands in the past, Charlotte's Web is one of the few companies in that industry, which is unregulated right now, that really scrutinizes their own product. They have a third party tested. They don't use any pesticides on their crops. They go through and they're constantly trying to create new breeds of hemp plants with different properties to them. And again, everything is with a mission to help people, because again, if you go to their website and actually learn about where they come from and how they got their name, it's pretty inspirational in that sense. And that's kind of their overall mission, is to make sure that they're helping people. And so if you want to check them out, you can go to charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu. You'll save 15% on the order. Give their products a try. Again, if you've never done CBD before, I'd encourage you to try one of the tinctures. I think it's kind of the easiest way to start. It doesn't really matter the flavor. Probably start with 17 milligram per dropper dose, which is I think the normal one. Try it out for a month and see what it does for you. Just be consistent with your dosing and your time and kind of see what kind of effects you have with it. Again, I like to take mine once at nighttime because it seems to just help me just ease into bed. Whereas I know Eugene and other people sometimes take it in the early parts of the day, and it seems to help kind of keep them sort of mellow and focused. But again, everybody's a little different. So sort of try it out and see what it does for you. Thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll at epicrollbjj.com. If you're looking for some new gear, t-shirts, shorts, rash guards, really anything that could possibly be related to jiu-jitsu, Matt has probably made something with it or for it. And so if you're looking for anything new jiu-jitsu related, check out his website at epicrollbjj.com. I really like his designs. The bulk of them are very clean. And I say that some of his designs have some wackiness and stuff going on, but most of the designs are super, super clean. And I really like them. They're shirts that I actually enjoy wearing. They're rash guards I enjoy wearing. I've put his rash guards and his shorts through the ringer. They've held up on me just fine. And so again, I feel comfortable saying that the shirts and the clothes are comfortable, and the gis and the rash guards will hold up on you if you buy one. So if you want to check out any of his stuff, you can go to epicrollbjj.com, and the promo code is Chewjitsu. You'll save 15% on the order. And also, guys, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. On the Patreon, we have unreleased episodes of the podcast that you can get access to with the different guests that we've had on there, giving you some jiu-jitsu tips that you can take away. Also, we have a assortment of videos from narrated rolls, breakdowns where I'm showing the different techniques I'm using during rolling or during competition. Also some technique videos, and we've also got some different videos on stretching and warm-ups and things like that could be useful to you. So if you want to check those out, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And if you guys would like to join my newsletter / Chew Crew email list. You can go to chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. And on there, when you join, you'll get my email, my daily email that I usually send Monday through Friday, but you'll also get access to 2 ebooks. So the first ebook is on building a jiu-jitsu game plan. If you're someone that trains jiu-jitsu, and especially, if we're going to talk about competition or being effective in the gym, it's a really good idea to have a game plan, understand how your game works, what your techniques are, if you're going to go against someone, what you're going to use, that kind of thing. If you think that would be a good idea as well, you'll get an ebook on that. And then I also have another ebook that I wrote this information for this ebook years ago for people that were trying to drill techniques, but didn't necessarily have a ton of control over their training. Meaning that they're not the coach like I am, to where they can just do tons of drills. So they had to either use open mats, or they had to use time when they were rolling and doing free rolling in class to get extra reps in. And so it'll give you some strategies on how to drill the techniques inside your gym, whether you have control of your training or not. And so you can get that as well. Both of those ebooks are given to you for free by going to chewjitsu.net and joining chewjitsu.net/join and joining the email list. And again, at any point you can unsubscribe should you not like it. So guys, with that said, let's go and jump into the podcast and talk about rolling to win. All right, guys. So today's episode is another Rules for Jiu-Jitsu edition. And today's rule is roll to win. Do not roll not to lose. Now, obviously, there are times where you may not roll to win. I just want to sort of preface this with this, right? We're speaking in sort of generalities. But when you're competing and when you're rolling in order to do your best, we're going to say it that way, in order to do your best and to express your jiu-jitsu abilities to the best of their potential, you've got to roll to win and do not roll not to lose. And I bring this up because this past week I got messages from people who just went to the Pans. Pans just finished up at the time of recording this. And 2 people who follow me who have basically they're dealing with the same thing, but they have different outcomes. So one was a guy who said that he was asking me about if I think sports psychology is a good idea. And I was asking him kind of why he asked that. And he said that it's because he is really struggling with just getting out of mentally getting out of his own way and going for it. He says in the gym, he's one of these people that competes or that rolls very well, and he's able to do a lot of cool stuff. But then when he goes to the competition, he kind of he shells up for a good portion of the match and doesn't finally begin to show his true game until it's too late for him to really make a difference. And so he's wondering, he was just kind of talking to me about, that ability to roll to win, not to lose, instead of not to lose. And then there was a woman who sent me a message who just won Pans. She won at purple belt. And she sent me a message and said that she had been watching my videos leading up to the competition that she was getting ready for. And she was very nervous about it. And she said she won the Pans and was blown away by her own performances. She's almost like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And she sent me this really beautiful message. And it was saying that, she went out there and the words that stuck with her the most, or the idea that stuck with her the most, was simply just forget about losing and winning. And if, things are going to happen, wins are going to come, losses are going to come, someone's going to get their hand raised, right? But go out there and give them hell. Get out there and get after someone, and no matter what happens, let the chips fall as they may, but make sure that you go out there and you do your best to just give it everything you got. And with that mentality, she ended up winning her matches and ended up placing in the open as well. And so this idea of rolling to win instead of not to lose is a big deal, because a lot of people suffer with it. If you're one of these people who struggles a bit, like I did, I struggled with this as well, of maybe you train pretty well, but then when you go to competitions, you have a tendency to lock up. Or if you go to your gym and you have a tendency to lock up, I'm one of those guys where I used to struggle with that as well, where when I would go up against guys, I used to be so afraid of losing that I couldn't even perform my best in the gym. I'm going to share some stories and share some ideas that'll hopefully be useful to you. So I don't really have this problem anymore, and I'll talk about how I got over it. But there's some interesting things that happened early on when I was coming up in jiu-jitsu. I had these shades, or these, I got a taste of what it's like to roll to win rather than being so focused on the loss. So one of the first ones in jiu-jitsu was when I competed as a white belt up against a purple belt. I've told this story numerous times, where basically I'm going around talking to all the different people that are at the tournament, and I'm asking them how long they've been training. And in this particular no-gi division, they combined white belt to purple belt. And so I'm talking to all these guys that have been training, and a lot of these guys have been training, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, a lot longer than I had been training. I've been training really at this point, maybe 6 months. Now I had some wrestling to go with it, but again, jiu-jitsu, only 6 months or so. And so, I knew that I was probably going to get smashed. And so the idea of even winning the thing was gone. I didn't think about it anymore because it wasn't going to happen. So my only focus was, all right, I'm going to get smashed. Let's see how I can do. Because again, at the time, my coach was a purple belt, and several of the guys in this division were purple belts. So I'm like, my coach kills me, so I'm going to get killed by all these guys. So, hey, let's just have some fun. And so I go out there and I compete against a purple belt who had actually taken second at Pans the year before in the gi, and I ended up beating him like 6-2. Beat him on 3 takedowns, and he had 1 sweep on me. And I did pretty well in that match, and I was so surprised. But it was so funny because there was no pressure. I normally had pressure when I would compete, and I would nervousness and all that stuff. When I got out on the mat and I saw my opponent, I saw that it was him. And I remember him saying he had been training for like 6 years or something. I just laughed. I was like, I even came up to him. I said, hey man, don't hurt me too bad today. And I ended up winning. It was very strange. And then it was interesting because then the very next match, I went up against another purple belt who had 8 years of experience on me. And now I was thinking about maybe I could win. And it probably wouldn't have changed the outcome because the guy that I was going against, he's actually a teammate now. His name's Spider, is the name we call him. It's his nickname. But I didn't pull the trigger like I did before.
Yeah.
There was another one because I dealt with this problem for a long time. There was one when I was a young black belt. Like when I got to black belt, I won tournaments, right? I won plenty of tournaments, but I always had this gnawing feeling that I would only every now and then see glimpses of who I could be in competition. Because for some reason, when I would go to competitions, I would intermittently have these really good performances. And then sometimes I would have these performances where I shelled up and I was not as aggressive as I thought I could be. And I didn't show my true game. And as a black belt, I was still struggling with this early on. And as a black belt, it became kind of tough because I was in a space where I was now a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I never thought I would be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. There was nobody in my area of Louisville, Kentucky, in the nearby areas that were really competing much as a black belt. I could go a few hours away and train with some, but not in my area. There were no other black belts really competing. And so for me, I'm trekking new ground, so to speak. And it's sometimes you don't know what to do. And so I was going against black belts and really struggling with this idea, like, man, like, do I even belong in these divisions? That thought was with me when I first started competing. And one of my very first matches that kind of got rid of any of this was I competed at this, literally I'm sitting on my buddy's patio. We're having some beers and we're enjoying his birthday. I had just been promoted to black belt maybe a week or two before. And my buddy that ran a tournament gave me a call. He said, hey man, we had a black belt have to back out last minute. We're looking for a replacement for this invite tournament that we set up. Can you do it? And I looked at my buddy, looked at the phone. I said, sure, man, I can do it. No problem. So I finished my beer and I was like, all right, we're going to keep it to 1 beer tonight because if I had 2 beers, probably going to have a hangover because I'm a lightweight. And the next day I went and competed. And I remember I was nervous, but when I got out there, I got swept. I was down 6 points, 4 for a mount and 1-2 for a sweep. And then I immediately rallied back, made my points back up. And then me and this guy, we just had a shootout back and forth. The match ended, I think it was like 12-13 or 14 or something. And I almost had a guard pass where I would have won the match. It was a great match. And I remember there was a guy named Sean who I saw compete a lot of times as a black belt. Really good guy. I had a lot of respect for him. And he came up to me and was like, man, you looked really good, dude. You belong at this division. I know, he kind of just said it in passing, but it stuck with me. And so it was, again, it's funny how this worked. As a young black belt, I had this weird thing where in my early matches as a black belt, like my first I would say first 15 or so, if I lost, if I got swept first, like within the first few minutes of the match, this happened like almost all the time. It happened several of the matches. I would typically come back and win those matches because what happened was I was no longer worried about losing or winning because I was losing. I was losing the match. I was backed into a corner. I have to go. Mm-hmm. And it was like once I was relinquished from the idea of having the win, of that there was a possibility that I was going to lose something. Once that was gone, I mean, my game would open up and I would rally back and have these beautiful performances. And then it would be weird because then when I would go to competitions where I didn't get a score on immediately, I was much slower. And even if I won, I really wasn't that satisfied with the performance because I didn't really show anything. It's like, I did enough to get by. I did enough to win. Sometimes I even lost those matches, but I didn't show what I could do. Right. And I think there really is something to us as humans. We search for ways of expression, like that's really what we're doing. We're doing this thing, and this thing is like expression. And it's, if you can't express yourself fully, it's frustrating. It's like as if you know the words that you want to use to talk to someone, but then trying to mouth it and you can't mouth it. You can't say it. It's almost like right now with my sense of taste where it's just coming back and I can't fully taste everything. It's like, I know what this is supposed to taste like. I know what this is supposed to smell like, but I can't fully get it out. And that's a lot of times the struggle that I was running into as a black belt, where I was struggling with that, where, I was like trying to just get this stuff out, get these moves out, but I struggled. So one of the things that I started to just sort of put together from looking at it, from back at it. Oh, I forgot one more story that I'll throw in, and then we'll get into the takeaway. One of the situations that happened numerous times in the gym was I would get into these states of, we would say, flow, right? These states of flow seem to happen more often when I did not care about what was going on. A great example was with a very common story that I share all the time was when I was training with one of my black belt buddies back when I was a brown belt. He was such a tough training partner with me, and I was always so worried about giving up anything when we were rolling. I was always worried about it because he would make me pay. He'd make me pay with like a lot of pressure and everything else. And so I didn't want to make a mistake. And a lot of times our matches would be very boring and very like, we would stalemate. And then sometimes he would get the better of, most of the time he would get the better of me. One day we rolled. I was sick that day. And by sick, I mean, I just didn't feel very good, right? It ended up not being an actual illness. I just didn't feel very good. I felt sluggish, whatever. And I got up that morning and I was like, man, I don't feel good. I ate a very small meal that morning, which is unusual for me. I usually eat a pretty good sized breakfast. Just couldn't deal with the food. Had some coffee and I was on my way. We rolled with each other that day after doing the drilling. We were getting ready for a competition at the time, which is why I went to the gym anyway, because we were getting ready for a competition. And I remember having this feeling of like, there's nothing I can do to stop him today. I'm just going to play damage control because I'm tired. I'm sluggish. I don't feel my normal self. He's going to whoop my butt. And then we rolled together. And it was the strangest thing where, because I didn't care and because I wasn't trying to muscle him and because I wasn't afraid of anything, I was doing really well. And it was so strange because just like a few days before on Thursday, he was beating my butt all over the mat. Saturday comes, and now like it's like I jumped. It's like I got better. And part of it was maybe because I did get better, but part of it I think was because of the mindset, because I simply just didn't care anymore. And it allowed me to be a little bit more free to try things and to look for solutions to the problem and to experiment. And it was so strange to him because I remember he kept asking me, he's like, bro, we got to roll again. He wouldn't let me roll with anybody else that day because he wanted to like, get his win on me. He's like, all right, I want to get one on you. Like, you just beat me twice. I'm going to get you at least once. But he didn't. It was just such a bizarre thing. And so putting all that together, there were more experiences, but those experiences are kind of indicative of things inside the gym and in competition that I was dealing with. And eventually I started to look back at it and said, man, when I get really obsessed with the win, I don't do very well. Like when I'm obsessed with the outcome, the end result, the outcome. When I get obsessed with that, I don't do very well. When I get obsessed with simply just doing what I can do in the moment, I do really well. Right? Like when I'm obsessed with like just hitting a technique, when I no longer care, when the idea of the win and the loss is no longer even in my thoughts, I'm just so clear to actually do what I'm supposed to do. And that is a liberating thing both in the gym and in competition, because a lot of times, so if you're one of those people where you feel like you do better in the gym than you do competitions, you're probably like me, and you're focused on winning. You're focused on getting on the podium. You're focused on all these things as if you already have them. And so therefore you're playing not to lose because you don't want to lose it. Essentially, you're like, you feel like you've already got this win. You're seeing yourself on the podium as if you won the match, but you haven't won anything. Yep. And you go out there as if you have something to lose. You have nothing to lose because you haven't won anything yet. But if you go out there with that kind of mentality, it's a bad thing. This is how I interpret it for myself. In the gym, it's a very similar thing where you go in and you train with someone and you're rolling with people as if you're trying not to lose some edge or something on someone, right? Like you don't want to expose something. You don't want to try something new because you don't want to get smashed afterwards. And I'm not saying you have to just be reckless and not be intelligent with your role, but you have to be free of that kind of mentality because it's not useful, especially in the gym when the gym is your lab. The gym is how you experiment. If you can't experiment, I mean, even if you are better than a certain number of people in your gym, if you can't experiment to create new things in your game, you're going to find very quickly that you're going to be passed up. That was something that I ran into early on. I experimented when I was younger. Then once I got to a certain level and I was kind of good, I was doing the same stuff over and over again. And that's, led to a lot of struggles there. Now, for me, part of me getting over this stuff was simply recognizing that that's what was going on. And as I've said many times on the podcast, awareness in itself is transformative because simply being aware that that's your problem. I'm focused on winning and I haven't won anything yet. I'm getting so focused on the end result and I'm not focused on what I'm supposed to do. I started to really be focused on my game plan. So like leading up to the competition, I would drill all the time. So this way I'm making sure that, especially the week of, I'm drilling my stuff. And then the weeks before the matches and the competitions, I'd be using my specific movements. So this way, when the day of the competition comes, I only have one thing to focus on, and that's my techniques. That's it. And then also I started looking at it, I was realizing if I win, it feels good, but then I just kind of want to go compete again, right? Mm-hmm. It only lasts for a little bit. If I lose, it stings for a little bit. And I actually figure out some new stuff that I need to do in my game, but like nobody hates me. Nobody thinks any differently of me. And the sting only lasts for a little bit. So it really doesn't matter. It's pretty inconsequential, but the feeling of not being able to express who I am on the mats to the full potential, that's the worst part. Right. And there were matches where, for instance, in the match where my first black belt match where I lost, but like I was talking about earlier, where I lost, but it was a really good match and I came back from all these points. That match, I had a blast. I was very proud of that match because I had some beautiful sweeps using positions that like I don't even normally use at the time. I was using like X guard and stuff, and I wasn't really good at X guard yet, but it was like a position I'd been working on. And all of a sudden it's, oh my God, I'm using X guard on a black belt and whatever. And all this stuff's happening. I was satisfied with that loss. Whereas then there were matches where I didn't perform to the best of my ability, and it wasn't, I actually won, But even with the win, I didn't feel good about it. And so again, everybody's different. But for me, what became far more important was how I expressed myself. And one of the things that, people, if they watch any of my matches in the last probably 6 years or so, what you'll notice is that I'm very aggressive. And I'm aggressive to immediately get after there. I'm usually done my first takedown attempt or guard pull attempt within the first 30 seconds, usually, which is not like most people take a little bit longer to start the matches off. I'm starting to start off right out of the gate. Like one of my matches at the Pans last year, I scored a takedown in within 17 seconds of the match starting, and that's because I'm focused on the techniques. I've already drilled them a bunch and I don't care what happens. Right. I mean, it's really that I want to win deeply. I really do, because I like winning. It feels good, but I am not attached to it anymore because I can't be, because it'll mess you up. It's the same thing. This is true for anything that I do. Like, for instance, if I make a video worried about the amount of views that it's going to get that's the only thing I'm worried about. It's going to be a terrible video, because then I'm going to be so focused on doing everything perfectly, when in reality, it should be focused on, like, I'm going to try to help this person out. Right. If we do the podcast the same way, you're going to get in your own way. If I create anything, do anything with that same mentality of not wanting to lose and whatever else, then you get in your own way mentally. And meditation helped as well, because again, meditation for me has been a way to, and I don't just mean like a seated meditation where you're still, because those are great, but there's different forms of meditation. But meditation practices where you start to like look at your own BS a little bit. So I remember like having the sensation, and I know that most people won't be able to necessarily relate to this, but I remember going to compete once. This is a number of years ago, and I'm getting ready to compete. And I'm looking at my opponent that I have in the finals, and I'm kind of like, man, he looks tough, whatever. And I'm kind of like thinking about whether or not I'm good enough to do this or whatever. And then I started to ask myself questions like, Chewy, this is myself talking to myself. Like, when you go to gyms, how many black belts thrash you? None. Like, the only time that black belts thrash you is when it's like a really high level black belt, like a JT Torres or a Muhammad Ali or someone of this nature, right? This is true. So why is this person going to just simply thrash you? Probably not going to happen, right? I ended up winning the match. And again, I still lose from time to time, but I don't get thrashed, right? And so I think that this is important too, is we do so much evidence. We develop so much evidence in the gym a lot of times, and even in other competitions, in our travels and stuff like that to other gyms, about how good we actually are. But then when we're faced with stressful situations, we get nervous and we can completely ignore that stuff. And so part of my struggle, was simply just to realize, like, man, you're way better than you're giving yourself credit for in these situations. Remember all the evidence you built up over the years in the gym and at other competitions and other things. And you have all this mounting evidence in the contrary to what you're feeling like in this stressful situation. And it was useful to have those mental conversations with myself about that stuff previously. And that was really useful to me. Again, that still requires a lot of hard work. That still requires you to get out there and, test yourself, because again, that's how you find out what you're capable of. But as you go on this path and you start to do this stuff, it's wise to remember that stuff as you go through it, and remember those moments of when you win and when you do well, and that was you. That's possible. And so, again, there's just some different ideas, but the big one, like I said, a lot of times for me is that, and I'm sure most people experience this on some level, if you start to find those glimpses of when you're not worried about winning and losing, and if you find that you start to do better, then that's letting you know that, again, that's what you're capable of. And that's not a fleeting thing. And you can access it. It's not like some ephemeral state that you can't get into. The problem is you have to get out of your own way, and you have to lose this obsession with like the outcome. It has to be just simply, we'd say the process, but again, you have to go for the win. And again, the win to me does not mean that it's a weird thing. When I say roll to win, it's not even like rolling with the intention of, I have to get my hand raised. It's with the intention of trying to use everything that I have to the best of my abilities because that's the only way I'm going to win. But that's really the focus. Because when I think about my own wins and when I think about most people, that's the way that they win. They win when they're not hindered by any thought about the win, when they're not worried about the loss, when they're simply just going out there and attacking.
Yeah, a lot of that takes practice, like practice and being present in the moment, like through meditation, which you're not wasting energy or your brain, like your energy is not going to all these other like what can happen or what has happened before. You're more focused on what you're doing right now, and breath and meditation, like we talked about, keeps you present because you're focusing on the breathing that you're doing at that moment. The one thing that for me, obviously I'm not as high level competitor as you are, nor do I have competed as many times, but like the thing for me was like exposure, exposing myself to those things, meaning going to tournaments more and making sure it's not such a shock to my system, because if it's this environment is new and all this stuff's going on, it's a shock and it's not your normal, you might find that you're comfortable at the gym, your training partners, your level, how you compete and how you train in the gym. And also it's something about being in your home environment. When you're going somewhere to a tournament you've never been, and then there's all these other elements, there's all these other things to deal with, the unknown. And I think that can kind of creep in and it can really mess with your head a little bit. And you're like, oh God, I just want to make it through almost. And, funny story. Like I remember being at the, one of James Klingerman, the EGO or the Ego tournament. I remember it was like a brown and black belt. So you had the competition, you had the white and, all that stuff, but you had a very, very small division of, the brown and black. I think they put them together. I remember everybody was dead silent when they were rolling. When the match was going on, it was so quiet in there. And you're like, oh my God, this is like something that's been seen before, very rare. This is like a rare occurrence, but like just the environment being so unique, that's kind of what I'm getting to. It's exposure to it and being used to it. And then like the meditation is something you can harness and practice at home, or in the gym. And then if you never meditate and you go to the tournament, you're like, I'm gonna focus on my breathing. You're gonna do shit. Your mind's gonna go crazy. So like that experience, a lot of it's just mental, like as well, like, just being mentally focused on the moment that you're at and what you're doing.
Well, and the practice thing is important too, because ultimately like meditation and being aware of this stuff, this is great. But at the same time, you need to know that you're capable and that it's possible for you to win in those tough situations. So for instance, I remember in high school wrestling, probably one of my like first moments where like I really felt like a winner, where I was like, wow, I did that, right? I was going up against a kid and his name was Rocky. That was actually his like literal, like a real name. And so Rocky was then going against me. At the time, my nickname was Tugboat. Burp, burp. So me and Rocky are going, and we're at my gym, my high school gymnasium, and we're doing a meet where it's us against the other school. Okay. Well, so me and Rocky go against each other. Now I had seen Rocky compete in wrestling the previous year. For varsity, I was JV at the time. And so I was watching him at one of the tournaments, and I'd watched him and he did really well and he was really tough and, looked really great. And then the next year I'm going up against the guy that I watched compete last year. And it was in my head, I'm like, dude, this guy's really good, and I remember competing against him, bro. And it was scary stuff because, I'm like, man, I'm going to be in front of everybody, whatever. I got out there and went against him and beat him. And I remember, it was like such a crazy thing. I still remember that night to this day when I remember just going home and I just felt like a winner, like I'd never felt like that before because I had beat someone who was so much better in my head than I was. And there was another guy later on that year that again had won lots of tournaments. And so it's my first year wrestling varsity. And I ended up going up against this guy from a different high school. I forgot his name. But I remember I ended up beating him like that year. And just sort of like cemented into my mind, like, sometimes these challenges are going to seem really big, and sometimes these guys are going to seem better than you, but you're far more capable than you think you are. So the best thing to do is just do it anyway. Just try it, see what happens, and go. And so that was a really useful thing for me to understand, is just, you did, like, as far as getting practice going, you just have to get in there and realize that you can win. So this way, doing so allows you a bit of a cushion. For instance, it's almost like having money in the bank. Having money in the bank allows you to make better financial decisions because you got money in the bank. You don't have to stress or panic. When you're strapped for cash, it's really difficult. But if you've got a cushion, so to speak, it relieves you a lot of stress. And so if you know that you're capable, then it allows you a little bit more freedom because you have what it takes to get the job done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think another thing you had talked about, which I think some of us, when we get to a new level of anything, maybe more notoriety on social media, whatever, is some of that imposter syndrome, right? You feel like there's a standard, like I have to uphold to the standard. I'm this person, like I have to know everything, and I have to, you feel like you can't make a mistake. Right. So you almost you don't want to walk the edge anywhere. You almost kind of walk this very fine kind of middle of the road, because you don't want to be wrong.
Mistake. Yeah, you don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah. So that's a hard thing to get over and get past. And I think, like, with you, sometimes it's a funny thing because you go to a tournament or like an IBJJF and people know who you are.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times you may look at, like, well, is he just a YouTube guy? Does he? And you'll see it all the time. People comment, well, Chewy actually has skill, and this and that, and they'll say that, like, they're surprised, like, he can't be both, right?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Well, usually the idea is that if like this guy was so good, why doesn't he just go compete more? Or something like that. I guess I think that sometimes people, I've seen that, like, the comment that I thought he was just a YouTube guy, as if, like you said, if you can't do both.
Right.
And I never understood that, but I guess maybe the reality is that if, like, you're such a good competitor, why don't you just compete? And I think that people don't understand that, like, there's more to jiu-jitsu than simply competitions and, like, beating people. I used to not think this when I was a bit younger and more immature. Like, I thought, like, the only thing that mattered was going to competitions and smashing the shit out of someone and being like, yeah, I'm the best, but as you get older and you've proven yourself, as you've got older and you've slayed dragons, so to speak, you kind of don't necessarily, and not everybody's this way, but you have different things that you want to do and express. And to be honest with you, I find a lot of fulfillment out of bringing people together, helping people, seeing other people make progress in their lives through training. Those things make me feel really good. Like me competing and winning a medal. I mean, I really do. At this point, I don't even give a crap about the medal. I have to remember to give them to Trish, and she'll, like, put them into little boxes and put them around the gym so that people can see them. But, like, I don't really care that much about them. I find it fun when I hit moves, and I find it fun to, like, test myself in kind of a stressful situation. It's kind of fun. But it's not something that I live for. Not like when I was younger. When I was younger, very much was trying to prove myself to myself just as much as anyone else around me, right? Because there's very much that I'm trying to prove that I'm as good as I think I am, or whatever, and it's a test to myself. All that stuff's there. But eventually you get to the point where, like, I don't care. It's like I am who I am, and this thing that I'm doing isn't who I am. It's just something that I do. And I think maybe even to some degree, coming to that realization and coming to that point in my life was also a reason where, again, my game became a lot more free because of the fact that I wasn't hamstrung by worry of, like, because, for instance, when I was younger, if I lost a match, bro, I was so upset. I'd be just frustrated. I would feel down in the dumps, usually until the next tournament. I'd be like, I'd feel like I'm like, something's wrong with me. And then if I won the tournament, then everything was fine again. It's like I took too much. I identified too much with the outcomes of those matches. And then now it's like, I posted one of my competitions last year where I beat the guy in the division, and then later on that day, we went in the open, we competed against each other again, and I lost to them. And, I got up and shook his hand, and like, we had a good time. It's like, it was fun. It wasn't something where I walked off and felt like I was terrible or anything like that.
Yeah.
And, I think it's just interesting how wrapped up and how mentally challenging those things are. Physically challenging, yes, but there's a hard mental thing. And that mental thing, when you can overcome whatever mental hurdles you personally have that are holding you back, you unlock like a new level of your game. Like now I'm one of these people, when I compete, I'm better in the competition than I am in the gym. 100%. I compete better because being in those situations, it excites me now. It doesn't make me nervous. It's actually the same feeling, but the way that I interpret it is different. I don't interpret it as nervousness. I interpret it as general excitement, as my body's getting ready for something. And because of that, I tend to perform better now than I did, or than I do in the gym. And I start doing all kinds of wacky stuff sometimes when I'm out there, and I walk off the mat now and I look back and I'm like, dude, who was that? Like, hey, that person looks like me, like whatever, plays a similar jiu-jitsu, but they're different. It's like, it's a different person that takes over when I compete. And again, that's a part of that's because I don't get my own way with any sort of worry about the what ifs. What if this happens? So what? What if it happens? That doesn't mean anything. My chances of winning are far more likely if I get out of my own damn way and just let something happen.
Yeah. That fear, man, you've learned how to let go of that fear. And that's something, like, for many reasons, whether it's you don't want to run out of steam during the match, you don't want to, go hard if it's 6 minutes and you run out of steam after 4 minutes, then that cardio is not there. It could be fear of that. It could be fear of your techniques not being sound, fear of your opponent having, a lot of it's mental, honestly. Like, if you can, like you said, pull the trigger like the way you do at the gym, for most people, like, you're going to be first and you're going to hit your techniques. But if you're just like waiting, like you said, that one other guy sent you that message, they couldn't kind of take off, and when they did, it was too late. Like, I think there's actually value in that. I think going through those experiences as well is valuable, because then you realize, oh, if I just, what to do.
Sure.
So again, it's like, it is a mistake in a way, but if you don't learn from it, it's just a pointless mistake, and it's something you're going to continue to repeat.
Well, right. I mean, the thing is if you can hang on and just get in there and compete against someone and not lose, well, then that you can hang with people.
Sure.
So why don't you just go? Like, if you're already hanging with them, you're not getting submitted left and right. Well, then you obviously know that you can hang with people. So we might as well go after them. It's like one of my old boxing coaches, I remember he told me this back when I was learning how to box. And, as a pure grappler, getting into boxing was a struggle. It felt very weird to punch and get punched. And I remember he like brought me over to the side. He's like, hey, Chew. Brought me over. And he said, look, because what was happening is I was going in there and I wasn't punching because I was scared of getting hit. And he said, listen, this is boxing. He said, so 2 things are going to happen. You're going to get hit, or you're going to get hit and you're going to hit them. And he looked at me and said, I don't know about you, but I like getting my licks in too. And he just kind of said it. He walked out of the ring, and then like we had another sparring session. And so it was basically like, I got to throw some punches. I got to go after the guy, because otherwise I'm going to get hit regardless. I might as well get a little something too, And so for me, again, going back to the match, like, in jiu-jitsu, like, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. People are going to hit techniques on you. You're going to hit techniques on them. You might as well go after them and try to hit your own techniques, right? You might as well try to get you some too. Yep. And whatever happens. And, I think it was something that had always kind of stuck with me about that.
Yeah. I guess in a way, accepting or not being afraid of the worst possible outcome. If you're already like, hey, this is a possibility and I accept that it is, and just go after it, and not fear that it's going to be something, because you can handle it. It is a difficult concept to grasp your head around when something like jiu-jitsu or even boxing or MMA means so much. And there's for you personally, there's a lot on the line because of the value you put on the activity. I mean, you saw it like an MMA, right? Talks about those Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis. They like threw like 30 punches or something the whole fight. And
Yeah.
it was because they knew the other person had power and they didn't want to
Right.
get hit, you know, which I don't blame them. Shit, they're heavyweights and they can knock each other out.
Right.
It makes perfect sense to me as someone that's never done MMA. But like you saw that at the highest level too, it can kind of happen. So I think just I guess if you accept the outcome, just go for it. But yeah, the other point is, like you said, well, I might as well do what I'm gonna do. If something's gonna happen, I might as well like get my licks in or punch them first and just see what happens, because I'm gonna get punched anyways.
Yeah, and the whole thing is again going back to it. The matches that I won where I was worried about the winning instead of worried about the techniques.
Yeah.
I tended to not be too satisfied with those, because I would look back on them and be like, man, I didn't really show what I could really do. And then the matches where I was kind of void of any thought of winning or losing, those are the matches where I walked away and I was like, God dang, man. Like, regardless of how I ended up, whether I won or lost, most of the time I won. But even if I lost, I was like, damn, I felt good. Like, I look good. I did some stuff out there and I hit this guy with this sweep and he hit me with, like, I had these battles, bro. And like, for me, you know, as a guy who's kind of at the point where I don't know how much longer I'll even compete. It's just not something that I enjoy doing it sometimes, but it's just not. I think that there's a season of my life that's starting to I'm starting to move into a different season of my life. You know, and you got to think, like, I'm a guy who's young, but for a long time I competed regularly in fighting and jiu-jitsu since I was and grappling since I was 15 years old. You know, so you're talking about like up until like 2020, really a lot. I mean, they're talking about like almost 20 years. That's a long time for anybody to just stay dedicated to one thing and all that stuff. So it's just something where it doesn't have the same draw that it used to. And I find that there's other ways that I can express myself besides just the competition, right? But with that said, you know, I'm moving into a different season or whatever. I lost my train of thought. Must be
I think
COVID brain fog.
Competition, you know, like the way it just, yeah. And I think
here's where I was going with this.
Okay, go ahead.
So I would walk away with these matches and everything and winning and losing. I won more than I lost when I had the mindset of simply just, let's go, let's do stuff. Yeah. And at the time, now as I'm getting older and I'm at the season where I feel like the season of my life is kind of ending, you know, I look back and I don't necessarily get wrapped up in like how many friggin' medals I have. I get wrapped up in, how did the match happen? What did I do during the match, right? What's the story to the match? How, you know, like when I have the war stories, like, oh man, me and this guy were going and I got him with this thing and he's going for this thing and boom, boom, boom. And we're going back and forth. And you have these battles to speak of. You know, in these things that you cherish, these memories that you cherish, those are far more memorable and more. I cherish them more than I cherish the actual medal. Like, you know, I think about like I don't know if you saw it. There was during the Olympics recently, they had a guy who he won in the karate. They had like a karate sparring thing, and he won the karate sparring event by getting. The guy kicked, he knocked out, but the guy somehow got DQ'd for kicking him too hard.
Sure. Yeah. I remember that.
Bro, could you imagine being the person who won that gold medal in the Olympics, winning that way? Like, that would suck. Like, bro, it'd be like, that would be I would be like, I can't just please take this medal. I don't want this. Like, give me my silver. I deserve a silver. You know what I mean? Because like, what am I supposed to do? Go back home? Because that's as guys that compete, you know, it's interesting. I've heard military guys speak to each other about experiences sometimes. Yeah. They can't speak to us about it because as civilians, we're not going to understand. You know what I mean? We've never been to war, so we don't understand. But I've heard other military guys talk to other military guys about stuff, and you hear them swap stories.
Yeah.
You listen to some jiu-jitsu guys get around that have competed, and they'll talk about the battles that they've had. Oh man, I caught him in the guillotine. That bastard got out of it, whatever. You have these similar ideas where you're sharing these stories with each other. I don't want to share some story. Oh yeah, dude. So I was going against this guy, man, and I just put my leg around him, and then I got an advantage, and then we sat there did nothing for 5 minutes, and I got my hand like that's not even worth telling, And I think at the end of the day, like that's kind of where I am at this point, where the matches and stuff are less as important the wins, but more importantly, it's like how did I win?
Yeah.
How did it happen? It's like just like living. Like it's not just about the life that you've lived, but like what kind of living did you do in it? Sure, you lived to like 90 years old, but you didn't do anything, or maybe you lived to like 60, but man, you did some crazy stuff while you were here. Like, there's different ways to view it. And so that's one of the things where, with it, I guess that's where I am is that I find that mindset to be useful, where I'm not necessarily focused on just winning to prove myself or whatever, but I'm also focused on having like wins and losses both, but having matches that are worth remembering. And just even that alone allows you, then you no longer have the focus of winning. It's more on the focus on like, what'd you do when you were out there? Like, how did you perform? Did you go for stuff? And having an overall mindset of focus and of conquering yourself. Because I really think that when you look at jiu-jitsu and you look at the different avenues or the different things that it can do for you, one of the areas is that you get this nice, safe way of dealing with your own stuff and learning to conquer yourself. And I think competitions or even rolling in the gym against competitive people, where I know that when I was younger, I used to have like the butterflies sometimes going to the gym. Those are moments to where you can conquer yourself, right? You can conquer your own BS, your own fears and worry, and put them into perspective. And that's a great chance to do that. And that's a skill that you can take over to other aspects of your life, where, there are other things that are going to create irrational fears and create nervousness and anxiety in your life, that again, you can remember the same things that you did during those times when you're in this competition match and you were nervous and you got over it and you ended up winning the match. Right. I mean, that's hell. Like when I might go up and find someone that I found attractive and wanted to talk to them, I might be a little nervous. You know what I mean? Like you might be like, oh, it's, she's pretty cute. All right, let's get it together. You have the same idea of dealing with those fears in those situations, because again, you're like, it doesn't matter. If she says no, who cares? But let's go see if she's interested, that kind of thing. So
and you kind of, you almost, I think a lot of it, as you mentioned, is the process, not the product. It's enjoying the process. The product, you get there. You hear a lot about even some of these athletes that have won Olympic gold, and they go in, they have like they go into like a deep depression afterwards because they've achieved that the whole goal of their existence was to win this gold medal. I think that like if you, you know what I mean? And
well, that's a whole podcast for another day, right? Of like, what do you do once you've achieved the goal?
Sure.
Right?
We talked to Muhammad about that. Muhammad said he had like a whole, after he won worlds, he had some issues, after that, like just like, where do I go next? But like just loving the process. And like you said, having those memories of like achieving something great and working towards it, at least is just, because, you did something difficult and you have given yourself the reps of overcoming a difficult thing. Like, okay, I'm going in a competition, I'm competing, I'm overcoming my fear of competition, this anxiety that I feel. Even if you don't maybe win, you're overcoming your fears in a way. And if you go out and you're proud of your performance, that's even a better way to overcome that.
All right, guys. So hope you did enjoy today's podcast. Hopefully, again, some of those ideas. I know we start off with a topic and then we start to like dance around it and we get all over the place, where sometimes the ideas don't necessarily mean exactly what we were talking about, because, we got into some different stuff. But hopefully there's some ideas in there that are useful to you. Again, every episode that we do, we try to give you something to walk away with, so that you just got done listening to us. You've been gracious with your time. You've allowed us to just kind of hang out together. And at the end of it, I want you to be able to walk away with some little idea that I can do this today, right? Because to me, I'm not a big motivation guy. I'm just not. I don't really rely on it. But one of the things that I do find motivating is when I get a new idea, like something that I feel like I can do right now, right? That's what motivates me. Being able to take action on something makes me motivated. And so anytime I'm digesting some sort of like business book or jiu-jitsu instructional or mindset type thing, anything, if there's a point where I get like a little something, like a little idea that I can immediately take action on, I get so jazzed up for that. Like it's one of the reasons why I have to personally be careful about what kind of information I take in before bed, because I have a tendency where if I'm reading something that's going to give me an idea that I can take action on like that moment, I probably won't sleep past like 5:30 because I'll wake up and I'm like, I gotta go, and so hopefully when you listen to these podcasts, you get some ideas like that. And because that is the mission for us most of the time. Like we talk, like Eugene and I will talk about it. We'll say like, what's the idea they get today? Like, what do they get for their time? That's the whole point. Like, I don't really want to sit on here and do a podcast and just talk like, hey, like this, I'm talking because I like hearing myself talk, right? Nothing like that. It's to give you an idea to make an impact on you. So that's the mission. And hopefully we accomplish that today. Again, guys, thank you so much for being with us. If you do have if you're using an app that does allow you to give us a review, we would love a review from you. So you can, do that wherever you do it. If you do not have a podcasting app that does reviews, if you follow us on any other platform, social media, Insta or YouTube, or have our email address for the podcast, shoot us an email and let us know what you think about the podcast or what's been useful to you from the podcast. And we'll take your message and we'll give you a shout out later on in the coming episodes. So if you shoot us a message or review, we'll give you a little shout out on the podcast. And so just give us a name with that or whatever handle you have with that. And so just notice that in the future. Thanks to our sponsors, Charlotte's Web. You can check out their products at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu. You can save 15% off of anything that they have. Again, if you've never used CBD before, I would encourage you to try one of the tinctures, try it out for a month, be consistent with the dosing, consistent with the timing, and see what kind of effects it has on you. You may feel nothing. I'll be honest with you, because everybody's endocannabinoid system is a little different. You might get it and be like, I don't see what everybody is making the fuss about. Or you might be like me and go into it with, I don't know what everybody's making a fuss about, to, oh, I get it. Wow, this is pretty powerful. And it was one of the things where during my stint with the COVID, I was making sure I sort of doubled down on my CBD dosage till I get some really good sleep, and it seemed to help out. Again, whether or not it does, I don't know, because I can't say that it did, right? But I know what I feel. So again, figure out what you feel when you're using their products. I'll say it like that. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Epic Roll, epicrollbjj.com. If you are in the market for any new jiu-jitsu gear, apparel, anything clothing related, he has something for it, right? Whether it's joggers or gi, rash guards or shorts, he's got it. And he's got cool designs on all of it. If you want to check out some of his, he's even got a fanny pack. I actually like his fanny pack a lot. I wear it all the time when I travel. I used to make fun of people in fanny packs, so then I started wearing them, and I'm like, they're really helpful for travel. It's really helpful to have stuff just where you can reach into your little pouch, like
a kangaroo pouch.
Like a kangaroo pouch. I guess pockets serve that thing, but there's something about having it right in your center that's like nice, rather than having a bunch of cargo pant pockets or whatever. Anyway, but you can check out any of his stuff and get 15% off if you go to his website, epicrollbjj.com, and use the promo code Chewjitsu, where you save 15% on the order. And if you guys would like to join my email list, where you can get my Monday through Friday emails, sometimes more emails, you can go to chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. You'll also be treated to 2 free ebooks. One is on jiu-jitsu game plans. So we just got done talking about using our techniques and everything else in a competition. One of the most effective things in my eyes, for competing is knowing exactly what you're going to do when you get out there. And one of the simplest ways to do that is identifying your game plan, what techniques you're going to use when it comes time to get out there and compete. And so again, if you'd like a sort of inside look as to like a basic way that I would do it, you can go to that website and get that. And also how to drill. Again, drilling, I think, is a really useful thing, because again, if you're in a situation where you mentally struggle, because of like everybody's got mental hangups sometimes, but if you're one of those people that finds that you mentally get in your own way and it causes you to be slow and be hesitant, Drilling can be one of the best ways to physically get over that, because if you drill a technique so well and you get it nailed down so tight, then a lot of times your brain is slow in comparison to your muscle memory. Your muscle memory has the ability to override the fear that you have in yourself. And so drilling can be a great way to at least start the process of showing what your game can truly look like. And again, in that ebook, I give 8 different drilling strategies away that you could implement, whether you control training as a coach or you have absolutely no control over your training as a coach, and how you can do that. So you can get both those ebooks and get my daily email by going to that website. And again, guys, if you'd like to support the podcast directly and gets access to additional content, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. When you join, you'll get access to, years worth of content, everything from multiple, not multiple, but one separate video from each guest that we've had on the podcast. We asked them a little bit of something about jiu-jitsu, and we basically pull away, again, an idea that you can take away for your training tomorrow to use from every one of the guests that we've had. We also have some random conversations on there with Eugene and I, as well as some really good ones. And we do some Q&As and stuff on there as well. And then we get into, guys, things like narrated rolls, competition rolls, stretching videos, warm-up stuff, that kind of thing. There's all kinds of stuff in there. So you can dig into all of that if you'd like by going to the website at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast today. And guys, with that said, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk to you next week.